morning, Suzuki community. It's Myron at Zuk's Off-Road. Beautiful Saturday here. It's still the monsoon season, so we're going to try to get this video in before it starts raining here. Today we're going to talk a little bit about T-cases, and I've got a T-case here kind of displayed out so we can talk about a few things. But today's main concern is I want to give you a little bit of an education about the funky parts coming out of India. A lot of you may not know this story, but India bought the molds for the 1987 Suzuki Samurai, and so they were making sheet metal down there in India and decided, well, we'll make our own engines and we'll make our own T-cases and we'll make our own transmissions, and so they actually started copying all that stuff. And some of my friends that import Suzuki products have found out that the India stuff is not exactly the same. So the big headline here is that if there's an M in the part number, even if it's in a Suzuki genuine product, which is SGP, if it's in a bag and it's got an M in the serial number, that is Maruti, and it's made in India, and it's not usually the highest quality. We're going to go over something that's been happening to a lot of my customers that are buying parts on eBay, being shipped from India, not knowing the difference and ruining things in their American Suzukis made in Japan. So the first thing I want to go over today is the high and low gear. You'll see a close-up picture of these later. These are different heights, and so in your T-case on your main shaft you've got a high bearing and a low bearing. That's what they're called. These are needle bearings. The original Koyo, K-O-Y-O, they have very nice formed edges. They're rolled. The India stuff has very sharp edges, so they're not rolled. Another thing that's a problem is that they have different spacing. The needles are spaced further out. There's less needles in the India needle bearing. But the worst part about the India needle bearings is that the needles are behind the fold on the ends. And so this particular one is blown up, broken, ruined the guy's T-case in 4 minutes because it was the cage that was rolling on the main shaft, not the needles. So if this is in a genuine Koyo bag, and the description is going to have the genuine Koyo numbers for the high and low needle bearings so that you know what you're getting. If there's an M in that part number, I already said it, don't get it. I mean, this one here will cut my fingers because of the sharp edge. So what I'm looking for is always that nice smooth round edge. It's a heavier cage. This cage here, as you see, is exploded. I mean literally exploded as it was cutting into the main shaft. This is a bad main shaft. We have a close-up of it. What you're looking for on a main shaft, here's a brand new one from the company that made them for Suzuki. So we don't get these in genuine Suzuki bags because we get it right from the Tier 1 company. So as you can see here, they're very nice and shiny, very chromy, very nice. This has still got a little cosmoline on it. That's what you're looking for on your main shaft when you rebuild your T-case. If you have any fingernail catches, any brown spots, any gray spots, this is where the noise comes from when you do a lift, when you put on big tires, when you do your big 6.5, 6.4 gears that we sell. This is where the noise comes from when you coast, is these needle bearings rattling around on you. So this is your big noise maker. When we're rebuilding T-cases, we have a bad main shaft, we won't put it back in. The customer has to buy a new main shaft. We do sell those, but you won't find them on my website. So also in the description, that reminds me, I'm going to show you a couple of guys that I recommend for getting used parts here in America. Tony is in Wisconsin, and Randy Gibbs is in the Pacific Northwest. I use both of these guys basically, I would say 99% of the time when I'm looking for that obsolete part. They're both in the business of buying Suzukis, whether they're sidekicks. They also do trackers, which are made by Suzuki, and then they're going to tear that car down and then they're going to sell parts off of it for you to get that obsolete part. Things like main shafts and needle bearings, I wouldn't say that, well, one of them is selling a lot of new parts, and so we'll talk more about that later. Anyways, so the main shaft has to be super, super good. And the needles you have to watch out for. The Japanese are far superior than the Indian. Now this goes across the whole board. So if you imagine a Suzuki Samurai was obsolete, had obsolete parts for a while, and then all of a sudden they showed up again about 10, 12 years ago, this is all because of the Maruti, which looked, it's also called the Gypsy, by the way. Some of you might know it as the Gypsy. So this is a car that was so closely made after the Suzuki Samurai that a lot of the parts do fit, but I've had some really bad experiences with the eBay parts. Water logs, I was guaranteed they'd fit. You know, the water log goes behind the water pump, and they don't fit in the hole. So it's just a throwaway because, you know, the India guys are so nice. No refunds. They send you crappy parts, and then they'll say something like, send it back to us, we'll refund it, but if you're not aware of this, it's a lot cheaper for them to ship into America than for us to ship to India. You're talking about 10 times the money going back to India. And so you don't get a refund because if you sent it back, you'd spend more money than it costs. So what do we do with these bad parts? We throw them away. So just be aware that eBay does sell a lot of India parts. Look and see where they're coming from. There's another thing I've noticed too, is Koyo is my favorite brand. I mean, it's the Suzuki brand. If you have Koyo bearings, you're the best. But see, they make different bearings for different applications, and a lot of the Indians right now are selling sealed bearings for places where the sealed bearings aren't supposed to go. In a T case, they're open bearings. The fluid, the 90 weight fluid, is what you're going to run in that bearing. When you're running grease in a sealed bearing, you're not running at the right temperature of the oil that is in that T case. And so it's really important that if you buy something that's a sealed bearing, that you pop the seals out. Don't worry about the grease in there. That will get into the oil and you'll drain it out on your oil change. Now, we're going to show you a picture of what a little bit of water can do to the steel from Japan. Japan has excellent quality steel. Unfortunately, it also will get a rust film on it very quickly. This is a T case that is absolutely stuck together from just a little bit of water. And so whenever you cross water, that's the time to drain your T case when you get home. Don't leave water in your axles. So I have a rule, if I'm crossing and my axles hit water, when I get back to the shop, I'm draining both the axles, the T case and the tranny, and I recommend, we'll put this up in the link, O'Reilly's 8090 Master Pro. Now the rumor is this is made by Shell and it's a GL5. Now you guys that are engineers know that a GL5 is a bad fluid to use for something that has brass, like brass synchros in a manual transmission. There are bronze thrust washers in the T case. That's about as close as you get to brass, and then of course we make our brass shift sheet. But here's the problem. It's not supposed to stay in your T case for year after year after year. It takes about 4 years for a GL5 to start affecting the brass synchros. And so if you cross water or you don't cross water, change your fluid. I recommend you get a 5-gallon bucket of the 8090, cross water, change the axles, change the T case, change the transmission. That's my rule, and that keeps us going for a long time here. Believe it or not, Arizona does have a lot of water where I'm at. We cross it a lot. So anyways, enough about water and your T cases and things like that. So the next thing I want to talk about is in the early model Suzuki Samurais, which is where most of your models are. For you new guys, there's a wonderful video you need to see. It's called Consumer Union versus Suzuki. You Google it, you watch the 15-minute video, get an education on why we're robbed, why we are taking it pretty seriously here. We don't get new Suzukis because of Consumer Union, fake news, lying about the rollover of Suzuki. So watch the video and find out how they got caught with their own videos, with their own recordings in the court case. Suzuki sued them because they could not duplicate the rollover based on how it was presented to them, and so in court all these documents showed up. What I like about the video is it shows how many cars got sold. So I knew when I came into this market 20 years ago that I was dealing with about 500,000 Suzukis, not counting sidekicks, trackers, and things like that. So it certainly has been a business that's generated millions of dollars for my company and for my people, because there's so many Suzukis. That's kind of why I got out of Jeeps and got into these. So in the early models, and let's just talk about them this way. Round dash. What's a round dash? Well, a round dash has got the round vents. What's a square dash? Square vents, right? So the square vents came out in 88.5, and everything after 88.5 just dwindled in sales. You get all the way out to the Holy Grail, the 1995, the last Samurai imported in here. If my memory's correct, it was less than 700 units got sold that year in 1995, and so we call it the Holy Grail. Now the 94 and the 95 are the exact same Suzuki. They have all 7 of the cosmetic features of those 2 years, but the 94 is not as valuable as the 95. They sold about 1,000 more in 94. Now why I'm bringing up this reduction of production is production numbers is because in all of the early models they had a front output shaft. This output shaft, if this is your, let's see if I can do this correctly. This is your rear end, this is your transmission, this is your engine, this is your front drive shaft. The gears are very small. You'll see a close-up of this. These were popping out of gear because of Americans were putting big tires on Suzukis right away, and the torque would pop it out. There weren't even gears available when these things first came out. Kudos to the companies that figured out how to weld gears together and get us two-wheel drive reduction. So basically what we have here is a heavy-duty front output shaft, and from the close-up you can see that it's quite a bit thicker. Now what this does is the coupler locks onto here and stays on. I am a big fan of front lockers. I hate rear lockers on anything that goes on pavement. If it's a Trailer Queen, go ahead and spool it, go ahead and lock it if you want. But if it's going to go on pavement, a front locker with power steering is going to make this car 5 times more capable than just a rear locker. And that's because that's where the weight is. And it's going to crawl up things. If you're into defying gravity, you want to get a front locker, which means, of course, power steering, because you cannot steer it if it's locked. And more importantly, chromoly axles, because the front axles on a Samurai are 22 spline. They're quite a bit smaller. I always tell people on the phone, just look at your thumb and the finger. This is a rear axle, this is a front axle. Well, you want to get a chromoly axle so you have big, thick front axles. So that's the heavy-duty output shaft I wanted to talk about. The next thing I want to talk about here is you've got to stop buying these crappy U-joints. It's so simple. I'm going to show you a picture of a Japanese U-joint, and we only sell 2. We sell the original coil. They're getting super expensive. Most places are going to be in the 3 digits now. That's over $100 for you math guys. And then of course you can go to AutoZone, O'Reilly's, and you can buy things like Precision. You can buy all kinds of fake U-joints. They don't fit exactly. You're going to find out that the clips don't fit in. You're going to find out that they have Zerk fittings. That's the giveaway. A Chinese U-joint has a Zerk fitting. A Japanese U-joint does not. Stop putting in these U-joints that are failing so rapidly and causing other damage. So remember that. Japanese U-joints do not have Zerk fittings. Okay, I want to wrap this up today for this short video and talk about something that's really special about our T-cases. Another reason why I have this T-case out here is to show you that there's not a chain in it. Because there's no chain, Suzuki Samurais have a very unique T-case, and it's got 2-wheel drive reduction. That means that you can put bigger tires on, change the gears in just the T-case, and get back to more like what the factory had in mind for that engine, putting horsepower to the rear wheels. So this is a benefit on pavement, 2-wheel drive. So your high speed can actually increase with bigger tires by doing gears in the T-case. And so I just kind of wanted to end that and just say, Don't forget, we have brand new T-case castings. We have all the gears. We have all the bearings. And again, I'm going to put in the description today 2 of my favorite places to buy used parts from. So say hello to Tony and Randy when you give them a call. And that's it for today. God bless you. Thank you very much for watching my videos. Please subscribe. I hope I earned your subscription. And tell other people about us, because we're exponentially growing here on our YouTube channel. So thank you very much. Bye-bye. Go wheeling.